everyone. Welcome back to Hometown TCG. My name is Josh.
And I'm John.
And we are here with our first Blitz deck tech video. And today we're going to be talking about Kano, the wizard.
That's right. Here we go. So let's talk about some of the things he does well.
Right. Before you build any deck, right, you got to decide if you want to play the hero. If you want to play the hero, you got to know what the hero does and even what the hero doesn't do. So I think some of the things Kano does well is he's got those really big explosive turns, right? He's got that great potential. And then what I like to say is Kano plays incredible in that tight window, right? 2 health game, 1 health game, 3 health game. Right down to the end, you play great in that tight window, but there are some things he struggles with, right?
Yeah. So the first thing we look at his hero card, he's got 15 life. Which he's easy to kill. He's easy to kill in 1 turn, honestly.
So he doesn't live well.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that your attacks, with being arcane damage, your opponent blocks them by pitching. So you're using your attacks, they're going to your discard pile, while your opponent's attacks are going to the bottom of their deck, and they're saving cards in their deck.
True. So it's a resource versus recycle method, right? All of your attacks are a resource that are limited, and they're using a recycle function to get that
You're on
back.
a timer at that point.
Exactly. Another thing he doesn't do well is he doesn't block incredibly well, right?
No. You don't really want to play a ton of defense reactions in him either, because if you use them off the power, it's a dead card.
Well, you're starting 5 life behind, right? So you got to catch up right away. Those defense reactions aren't going to get you there.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument, but we find that we don't like them.
In our deck tech, we don't really like him that much, but we're going to start every deck tech the same way. We're going to talk about the hero and kind of talk about their core. And to understand the core, you got to know the hero and what they do. So go ahead and touch on Kano for us. What does Kano do?
So Kano's ability, 3 resources in order to look at the top card of your deck, and if it's an on-attack action, you can play it. So essentially, you're getting rid of a card from your hand to play the top card of your deck.
And that puts you ahead in those tight windows, right? The ability to play on your opponent's turn, right? The ability to expand your resources. And when you're limited, when you're starting from a disadvantage, that extra hand, that top of your deck, is a resource.
Yeah, I mean, there are turns where you can be playing crazy amounts of cards. And the thing is, with it, you can do it on your turn or on your opponent's turn. Which the advantage is that late game, it's like you get an extra turn.
Right. It puts you over the top. And we're going to use the Crucible of Aetherweave as our weapon in our deck tech today, right? And the ability is pretty much, it's just like we keep talking about. It's that ability to push you 1 over the top, maybe sneak some damage in, right?
Right. Once per turn just gives you 1 extra, and that can give you the good on-hit effects as well, activating them.
True. And there is another option.
But 2 pitch for 2 arcane damage just doesn't really seem worth it at the moment.
It's too equal, and with, like we always talk about, starting behind, we can't go equal, right? We gotta find a way to get
easy
ahead.
To block. We gotta find any advantage we can.
Sure, and a lot of that advantage is going to come from the hero's core, which I believe is their equipment, right? It's available to them all game. You're gonna want access to it. You're gonna have access to it. And what equipment are we running?
So let's talk about Storm Striders, his legendary first.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a necessity, right? You have to run them.
Yeah, at first glance, it looks similar to Mage Master Boots, the common, which on your turn it is. But the difference is that the Storm Striders lets you play on your opponent's turn, which we talked about being able to get that extra turn at the end of the game to finish them off is important.
Right.
This is a key piece to that.
And that's one of those things that's going to help you excel in that late window, right? And he plays another wizard-specific item, correct?
Yes, so the Metacarpus Node. That's his arms. It's another one that's not really super powerful, but it just gives you enough incremental advantage to get over the top. So on 1 turn, maybe if you can use it a couple times, that's enough to hit your big attack that we'll be talking about in a few minutes.
Right. It feels almost necessary. I know it's very limited, it's very situational, but it feels necessary because you're playing in such a tight window, right? And to go along with kind of that resource in that tight window, for a chess piece, we're going to be running Findel's Spring Tunic. There's an argument to be made for the wizard-specific chess piece, right? I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
The Robes of Rapture.
The Robes of Rapture. There's an argument to be made, but we're running Tunic. When is Robes? When would you want to run Robes?
In the mirror matchup, first of all, it's got Arcane Barrier on it, so that gives you another one against another Kano.
True.
And then that additional pitch, it can be great because sometimes your games don't even last 3 turns, honestly, to get the extra one from Tunic.
True, and you're not going to benefit at all.
Yeah.
If you get to turn 3, it does feel huge. Games that end in 2 turns, you're feeling pretty bad sitting there with Tunic.
Right.
You touched on something that's very interesting, and I want to remember to talk about Null Rune, but before we do that, I do have to talk about my favorite piece of equipment in this deck, and that's the Talismanic Lens. It just feels like the ability to dig and look at what you got coming, again, in those tight windows that we always find Kano playing in. It's what you need to make sure you can get the job done, right? We're not RNGing off the top of our deck, we're taking that peek.
Right. And it's something that, again, doesn't look super powerful, but for what Kano does, it's necessary.
For sure. Right. Now, there's a couple alternatives for equipment, right? We have a hood and a gauntlet here that we will include in the deck list.
Right, so another Null Rune hood, if you're playing the mirrored matchup, that's a possibility. Iron Rock Gauntlet could be an option if you're playing like against Ira or something.
Yeah, against Ira, it's nice.
That, extra block there.
But the opt is so necessary, and that kind of leads us into the first thing I want to talk about with Kano and our specific Kano deck. It's going to be the opt mechanic. Now, I touched on this earlier. I believe that when you're starting from behind, the top of your deck being an additional resource is a necessity. So the opt mechanic allowing you to control that additional resource and give you that slight advantage, I feel like you can't play without it. And the main card that I find is giving you that advantage is Cindering Foresight.
Right. That is a card that I admit I thought it was terrible when I first read it.
You did.
It doesn't look that powerful, but the opt is just so important for him. The thing is, he has crazy combos he can get off, and the opt allows you to sculpt your hand to try to make those combos happen.
It definitely feels like a necessity, which leads me to our next point, and I hate to say this out loud because it's not the most budget friendly. It's not budget friendly at all. The Eye of Ophidia. It's a necessity in this deck if you're playing competitively, correct?
Right. It has some disadvantages. It can't block.
Sure.
Off the top, it's a dead card. But when you draw it, it just feels so powerful. You have so much more confidence knowing what you're going to get off the top.
It really allows you to use your power in situations where you might not have the strength of will, let's call it, to pitch that card and roll, RNG off the top.
Yeah, it just takes away some RNG.
It does. Now, in an event that the Eye of Ophidia is maybe a little bit out of your price range, or maybe it's not a card you have, Gaze the Ages, it's a pseudo Eye of Ophidia, correct?
Right. And it's one that can actually be played off the top of the deck. So off the top of the deck, it's way better.
Yes. So you do have the ability to Kano's power into Gaze the Ages and possibly get it back, getting you that additional resource. And finally, for our opt mechanic, we do really like Red Aether Spindle in here.
Right. It's a card that it's not the easiest to get off. You have to buff it, so you could get it over the top for 5 damage.
True.
If they're running Null Rune 4, for instance, and that gives you the opt 1. But if they don't block it, they don't have the resources that turn. If you're opting 2 or 3, that's incredibly valuable.
Right, you're really setting yourself up, you're really giving yourself that advantage, and you're making that window, like we always talk about, you're shrinking that window where you play well. And to do that, all this opting is great, all these mechanics are nice, setting our hands up, playing with that resource, but when we're 5 life behind, if we're not doing damage, we're in trouble. So we included a lot of goodies here to do damage, and I think I know which one you want to start with. I'm going to go ahead and guess.
So Forked Lightning is really the most powerful, in that every time you buff the damage, it's done double.
Right. Because you have 2 instances of damage and only 1 instance of arcane block, you're able to kind of push over the top with a single buff.
Right, so if you have Stir the Aetherwinds and you hit that into Forked Lightning, all of a sudden it becomes a 10 damage attack.
Right, and you're looking at, kind of shrinking that window and putting yourself in that lead that you want for that last turn. And that can be done, again, with Storm Striders, with a lot of your equipment on any turn. But I find even stuff simple like Voltic Bolt, right? It's a simple spell, it's great to cast on your turn, and it forces a resource trade. And in this video, in the playtesting that we've done, that resource trade it's essential, right?
Yeah, and just being able to buff a Voltic Bolt with the Crucible is huge.
It's huge.
I mean, a lot of people are only going to, even if they block out, essentially, they're still taking 2-3 damage.
Right, and any point counts at that point. And we are running a couple copies of Blazing Aether in our deck just to push over the top.
Right, so that's the one, the end point of your big combos.
That's the haymaker.
You set them up with a couple jabs.
And then you knock them down with the Blazing Aether. Now, Blazing Aether with your power off the top of the deck after a big turn feels incredible. It feels unstoppable.
Right, if you hit that Forked Lightning for 12 damage, and then you have another blue in your hand, boom, off the top, hit the Blazing. that's game.
And it's more than possible with all the opt setup and cards like Lesson in Lava that we are running as well to kind of cheat that into play, right?
Yep, so let's talk about things like Lesson in Lava, which are some of our setup cards or other goodies.
Okay. So go ahead. Where do you want to start?
Yeah,
with
so
our
we
goodies?
have Lesson in Lava, which lets you search out any card to put it on top, which then you can play with your power.
Yeah, that combos. I mean, that's so obviously combos so well with Kano. The ability to, again, cheat what you're going to play, right? Whether it's Op or whether it's Lesson in Lava, cheat what you're playing is just crucial. It's amazing.
Right. One that I think Josh loves is the Tome of Aetherwin.
Oh,
why is that?
I mean, card draw is my thing. And with Kano's power, powering into a tome has so many options. You pointed out a great option to me in playtesting that I hadn't thought of. In an event you're trying to block a big attack, Kano's power into a tome, drawing the extra cards just to lay down his block can be life-saving, right?
Right. It can get you an extra 3 block out of nowhere.
Exactly.
Or it can get you out of like a potion in your hand.
It can get you out of a potion in your hand. It can get you, yes, trading the potion for the 2 additional cards. I gotta tell you, I'm a huge fan. You turned me onto it. And the next part, you also got me on this combo. It's a little weird with how the mechanics of the game work, but do you want to go ahead and talk about our next kind of
Yeah,
setup?
so Snapback and how it interacts with cards like Chain Lightning. So Snapback is, the red one, is going to be 3 damage for 1 cost. And
Yes.
if you played another wizard non-attack action, you're able to use it as an instant. So what you do is you play something like Chain Lightning, and it's been played, but its powers have not taken effect yet.
Yeah, so it's on the stack. The ability is floating, correct?
So then, that card's sitting there, effect hasn't been used, you play Snapback as an instant,
Yep.
because all it does is check to see if a card has been played.
Yes, hasn't seen it if it's been resolved.
So then Snapback goes on top of the stack, Snapback resolves first, doing 3 damage, then Chain Lightning resolves, doing 3 more damage, and lets you
Exactly.
play another card.
100%.
Like Blazing Aether.
Like Blazing Aether, it allows you to sneak something in there. And then finally, for kind of our setup, it's, I think, one of your favorite cards in our build.
Yeah.
It's got to be Sonic Boom, right?
Sonic Boom just offers a lot of value. Sure, it has a lot of cost.
Yes, it is an expensive card, right?
Right, but it's one that you definitely want to buff with Crucible or possibly Metacarpus Node.
Yeah, if you're really going for it.
Because it can let you get it over the top. And a lot of times I'll do it, and then I'll react to it with an instant of like Talismanic Lens, look over the top to try to get something good, put that on top, and go for my big combo at the end.
And
of
if
the game.
anything, you force a block too. But we just talked about the fact that this is expensive, so it brings up a good point that I do want to touch on. Is our resources in this build, right? Kano, it's very important with his power costing a blue, right? And all of your big abilities and the combo change you want to pull off be a little more expensive. It's important that you have the resource to do it. So I believe we're running 18 blues in our Kano build.
Yeah, something close to half. It seems like a lot, but it's needed if you want to be playing off the top, if you want to be playing these expensive things.
And we've played this deck probably about 50 times now, and we find that without that resource, you're in a tight spot. You can't get yourself into that window where you excel. But we want our resource cards to also be useful in the event that we have to use them, right?
Right.
So not just any blue will do. What are some of the resource cards we're running?
Yeah, so Energy Potion is a great one, first of all, because it can be played off the top.
Yes, with Kano's power, right?
Yeah, which can be good for early game or late game.
Right.
Time Snap Potion is similar in the fact that it can be played off the top, but not so great late game.
Yeah, I think you'll find we're only running one. Time Stamp Potion is a little situational.
It comes in and out.
Yes, it comes and goes. So that's why you'll see a one of them here.
Things like Voltic Bolt.
It's damage. It's blue, it can be used as pitch, but in the event you got it in your hand, it's damage. It's that resource trade, and you can, like we've talked about everything else, you can push it over the top. I like it.
Talk about Snapback. We've already hit on the red one. The blue one allows you to trigger the same combo. So it's not going to do much damage itself, but it can do the Chain Lightning combo or the exact same thing with Gaze the Ages.
Exactly. And it gets you, maybe in that tight window we're talking about, you need 1 or 2 to get that win, right? You got to get that extra 1 or 2 damage for your Blazing Aether to get that win. I think even blue Snapback in that window, it's crucial. I like it in this deck.
Right. And then we have things like Reverberate, which is a 1 cost, deals 1 arcane damage, but it has that effect on it where if you deal the damage, you get to do something else.
Yeah, and Reverberate seems like it's meant to be a resource trade, right? No one's going to let Reverberate go unchecked so you can Reverberate into a Sonic Boom or something crazy or a Chain Lightning. They're going to block it, but with that 1 damage, maybe you can draw out a large block, and then move on and try to push yourself ahead that way.
Yeah, it's not the best, but it has a use, which is what we're looking for in our blues.
100%. And all of this is kind of what puts Kano in a really unique spot in the meta. I would consider him probably second best build out there right now.
Yeah, so pretty much if you're playing Blitz, you're gearing to beat Ira or Kano.
Yes, if you're not playing Kano, you're trying to beat Kano. If you're not playing Ira, you're trying to beat Ira. And that's just right now. The meta will shift and evolve, but that's kind of the space we live in at the moment.
Yeah, so I think something interesting was that I was looking at Jacob Pearson's deck list.
His Ira deck.
Yes. So we were looking at his Ira deck from the calling, which just happened a week ago.
Yep.
And his recent one plays, it was 17 or 18 blues, but his previous deck that won played only 14.
Okay.
All right.
Would you say that's a direct response to Kano in the meta?
Definitely. As Kano grows in the meta, you'll see people playing more blues, more Arcane Barrier. Half the Iras were playing 4 Arcane Barrier.
Oh, and 4 as when you play Kano, guys, 4 Arcane Barrier is tough to go over. But I mean, you're seeing direct responses, much like Ira in the meta. You're seeing direct responses to Kano in the meta. So we did want to make that build kind of around the meta as it exists today. If we see a lot of Null Rune and Arcane Barrier and stuff drop off, we will probably change our build a little bit to be a lot more quick, direct damage.
Yeah. You can play cards more like Aether Flare, which is harder to hit, but if you're not playing any Null Rune...
Right, if you can get an Aether Flare over the top. Yes. Oh, totally.
Right.
So that kind of wraps up what we're talking about with our deck. We will have a deck list for you guys down below. We will put some notes on our play testing in the description. Anything else you want to touch on before we head out today?
I think that pretty much sums it up. Let us know if you have any questions.
Let us know if you have any questions. Tell us in the comment what deck tech you want to see next. Again, I'm with Hometown TCG. I'm Josh.
I'm John.
Thanks for hanging out today. We'll see you in the next one.
Later.
Goodbye.